The Wraithbone Waygate screamed as psychic force tore through its ancient structure. Farseer Eldrad Ulthrin stood at the heart of Craftworld Ulthway's most sacred chamber, his hands weaving patterns of psychic light that had not been used since the fall itself. He was not summoning an Eldari god. He was reaching beyond the warp itself, into the spaces between realities, searching for something older than chaos. The ritual pulled at his soul like a black hole pulls at light. But Eldrad did not falter. Millennia of failure had brought him to this moment. Millennia of watching his people slowly devoured by the thirsting god they had birthed through their own excess. The chamber held 50 seers, their minds linked in a psychic chain that stretched across dimensions. Each one bled from their eyes as the strain mounted. The youngest, a seer named Iliathan, collapsed first. Her mind simply broke under the pressure of what they were attempting. The others did not pause. Could not pause. The ritual demanded completion or it would consume them all. Eldrad, the warp rejects the summoning, warned Seer Taldir, her voice tight with pain. Something is wrong. The Imperium fights against itself. It does not want this thing to enter our reality. Good, Eldrad replied, his ancient voice steady despite the blood running down his face. If chaos fears it, then it is exactly what we need. The air in the center of the ritual circle began to fold. Not tear or rip, but fold, like reality was paper being creased by invisible hands. The seers gasped as they felt it. This was not warp energy. This was something else entirely, something that predated the categorization of matter and energy. Something fundamental. A figure stepped through the fold in reality. Tall, impossibly slender, dressed in black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His skin was pale as moonlight on water. His hair was wild and dark as the space between stars. His eyes were twin points of absolute blackness, pupils that contained depths no mortal should witness. He looked at the gathered Eldari with an expression of profound confusion. "Where is the dreaming?" he asked. His voice was soft, yet it carried to every corner of the chamber without echo or amplification. "I felt the pull of a summoning, but the dreaming does not exist here as it should. There is only the Imperium's nightmare." Eldrad stepped forward, his psychic senses reeling from what they detected. This being registered as an impossible pattern in the warp, a presence that wasn't of the Imperium yet cast shadows into it. Not warp-born, yet not entirely separate either. Something that should not exist within the framework of their reality. "I am Farseer Eldrad Ulthrin of Craftworld Ulthway. We reached beyond our reality to call for aid against the darkness that consumes our people." The being's eyes narrowed. "Summoning one of the Endless is extraordinarily rare and dangerous, and it never works as intended. Yet I am here, and I do not fully understand how or why." He looked around the chamber, taking in the infinity circuit that held the souls of dead Eldari, the psychic wards carved into wraithbone walls, the desperation painted on every face. "I am Dream of the Endless. I am not subject to casual summons. I go where I will, when I will, yet something pulled me here." Before Eldrad could respond, alarm shrieked throughout the craft world. Autarch Millennial's voice cut through the psychic network, sharp with urgency. "Farseer, we detect a massive warp disturbance in the ritual chamber. Is this your doing?" "Stand down, Autarch," Eldrad commanded. "The summoning is complete. Do not interfere." But Millennial had survived 3,000 years of warfare by trusting her instincts over orders. She arrived in the chamber within seconds, leading 20 dire avengers and a wraith lord whose soul stone pulsed with aggressive intent. Her shuriken pistol was already raised, targeting the strange figure in black. "Identify yourself, demon. By what right do you stand in our sacred places?" Dream turned to face her with the slow, deliberate movement of someone unused to being threatened. "I am not a demon. I am Dream. I am the Lord of the Sleeping Realm, the Prince of Stories, the Shaper of Nightmares and Guardian of the Unconscious Mind. I have held my office since before your species learned to close its eyes. Millennial's finger tightened on the trigger. Lies. All demons claim ancient heritage. All pretend to be something more than warp-spawn corruption. She fired. The monomolecular discs screamed through the air at hypersonic speeds, each one capable of shredding ceramite armor. They passed through Dream like he was made of mist. The shuriken discs embedded themselves in the wraithbone wall behind him, still spinning, still lethal. Dream had not moved, had not even acknowledged the attack. He simply continued speaking as if nothing had happened. Your weapons are designed for matter and energy. I am neither. I am concept given consciousness. I am the foundation upon which sleeping minds build their nightly theaters. He looked at Millennial with something approaching sadness. You dream of a daughter, lost in the fall. You see her face every night when you close your eyes, carefully warded, fearfully guarded. That is my domain. Millennial staggered backward as if struck. No one knew about her daughter, no one. That secret had died with the birth of Slaanesh 10,000 years ago. How do you know that? What manner of witchcraft is this? It is not witchcraft, it is my nature. I know all dreams, all dreamers. Or I did in my realm. Dream's expression darkened. But here the dreaming has collapsed into something vile, replaced by the Imperium's madness. I feel it pressing against the edges of reality. 4 great poisons where once there was the natural realm of sleep. The Wraithlord stepped forward, its massive form towering over Dream. The spirit inside was ancient, furious, and protective of its craft world. It raised its wraith cannon, a weapon that opened distortion rifts and dragged targets into nowhere. At this range, nothing survived. The reality shear lanced out, a hole yawning in space that sought to pull Dream into the warp itself. Dream raised his hand, not in defense, but in negation. The distortion effect simply stopped, not blocked, not deflected. It ceased to exist the moment it entered the space around Dream's palm. The Wraithlord staggered, its sensors screaming error messages its pilot could not comprehend. Enough, Dream said, his voice taking on a quality that bypassed hearing entirely and spoke directly to the consciousness of every being in the chamber. He reached into his coat and withdrew a handful of sand that gleamed like crushed diamonds under starlight. With a gesture almost casual, he scattered the sand into the air. It drifted on invisible currents, each grain finding one of the attacking Eldari. They fell instantly, not wounded, not dead, simply asleep. 20 dire avengers collapsed in perfect unison, their weapons clattering to the wraithbone floor. The Wraithlord's animating spirit receded into deep stillness, its consciousness retreating into the meditative core of its soul stone as the massive wraithbone construct went dormant. Even autarch Millennial, who had weathered psychic assaults from daemon princes, felt her eyes growing heavy. She fought it with every ounce of her considerable willpower, but it was like fighting the pull of a singularity. Within seconds, she too lay sleeping on the chamber floor. Eldrad had not moved during the entire confrontation. He stood watching, analyzing, understanding. You did not kill them. You could have, but you chose mercy. I do not kill unless there is no other option, Dream replied, though his tone carried a severity that belied simple compassion. This was not warm mercy, but principled inevitability. They attacked from fear and duty. I will not punish fear, and duty I respect above most virtues. He looked at Eldrad with those impossible black eyes. You reached for me across realities for a purpose. Speak it plainly, Farseer. I have little patience for games, and I sense this reality is deeply wrong. Eldrad gestured to the infinity circuit above them, where millions of soul stones glowed like captured stars. We are the Eldari. Once, we were an empire that spanned worlds beyond counting. We achieved heights of culture and technology your mind can barely imagine. But we fell. Our excesses, our pursuit of sensation and experience, our refusal to accept limits, It all culminated in a psychic catastrophe. "You birthed something," Dream said, understanding flooding his consciousness. "I felt it when I arrived. A massive wound in the fabric of reality where your species' home once was. A god of appetite without end." "Slaanesh," Eldrad whispered, the name itself causing psychic pain. "She who thirsts, the prince of pleasure, the great enemy. Our civilization's collective desires and darkest urges given form and hunger. She consumed 90% of our species in her birth scream. Now she hunts the rest of us, claiming our souls the moment we die. We cannot escape her. She was made from us, and we are eternally bound to her." Dream walked to the nearest soulstone, studying it with clinical interest. He could feel the Eldari spirit trapped inside, protected from Slaanesh's pull, but imprisoned nonetheless. A soul that could not rest freely, could not dream without wards and fear, could only exist in careful stasis. "You corrupted the realm of dreams itself. The sleeping world, the unconscious mind, the place where imagination shapes reality. You twisted it into something obscene. You made nightmare sovereign over sleep. Can you undo it?" Eldrad asked, and for the first time in millennia his voice carried genuine hope. "Can you destroy Slaanesh? Restore what we lost?" Dream was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. He reached out with his senses, trying to feel the structure of this reality. Where once there should have been the dreaming, the endless realm of sleep and story that existed in all realities, he found only the Imperium. The warp. A roiling ocean of emotion and thought that had subsumed the natural dream realm into something cancerous. "I must understand what has happened here," Dream finally said. "I must see the dreams of your people. I must walk through their sleeping minds and witness what you have become." Eldrad nodded slowly. Around them, the sleeping Eldari began to stir as Dream's sand released its hold. "I will arrange it. But be warned, Dream of the Endless. What you see will not bring you comfort. We are a people who dream only with wards and fear, who guard our sleep as carefully as our souls." That night, if night could be said to exist in the timeless interior of a craft world, Dream walked through the sleeping minds of 100 Eldari. He saw Autarch Millennial's dreams first, as a courtesy for her attack. She dreamed carefully, with psychic barriers maintained even in sleep, of the daughter lost in the fall. A child barely old enough to walk when Slaanesh's birth consumed their world. In the dream, the girl danced through gardens of living crystal while her mother watched, unable to reach her, knowing that any moment the dream would transform into nightmare and Slaanesh would arrive to devour them both. Dream moved through the dream like a ghost, unseen but feeling everything. He felt Millennial's love for the child, felt her crushing guilt at having survived when so many others had not, felt the constant gnawing pull of Slaanesh at the edges of her consciousness, waiting for any moment of weakness to claim her soul. He visited the dreams of seers who dreamed of futures that never came, forever haunted by visions they could not prevent. He walked through the nightmares of warriors who died nightly in their sleep, only to wake and return to wars that never ended. He felt the dreams of artisans who could no longer create without fearing their work would please Slaanesh. He witnessed the carefully controlled shallow dreams of farseers who dared not sleep deeply, who kept themselves in light meditation rather than risk Slaanesh's notice. Every single dream was touched by fear. Every single sleeping mind carried the weight of extinction pressing down on it. These were not dreams of hope or wonder or possibility. These were the dreams of a dying species clinging to existence through force of will alone. When Dream returned to the waking world, Eldrad found him standing alone in an observation gallery, staring out at the stars beyond the craft world's boundaries. "Well," the Farseer asked, "oh, what did you see?" "A nightmare wearing the skin of a civilization," Dream replied, his voice heavy with an emotion Eldrad could not identify. "Your people do not dream freely. They guard their sleep as they guard their souls. There is a difference between rest and survival. He turned to face Eldrad, and the ancient Farseer took an involuntary step backward at what he saw in those black eyes. I must see this, Slaanesh. I must understand what you created. I must enter the warp itself. That is suicide, Eldrad said flatly. Even for a being of your power, the warp will corrupt you, change you. The Chaos Gods do not tolerate intrusion into their realm. They do not have a choice, Dream replied. I am going to find out what happened to the dreaming in this reality, and if Slaanesh consumed it, then I will meet your thirsting god face to face. Before Eldrad could protest, Dream closed his eyes and simply stepped sideways through reality. One moment he stood in the observation gallery. The next, his consciousness plunged directly into the Imperium, diving into the roiling madness of the warp, without protection, without ritual, without fear. The last thing Eldrad heard before Dream vanished completely was a sound like laughter echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. Not Dream's laughter. Something else. Something ancient and terrible and impossibly pleased. Slaanesh had noticed the intrusion, and the Dark Prince was very interested in this new arrival who claimed dominion over dreams. Dream emerged into a palace that should not exist. The architecture defied geometry, walls curving in directions that had no names, floors rising to become ceilings that dripped with colors pain could not describe. Everything was too beautiful and too terrible at once. Golden spires pierced dimensions instead of sky. Gardens grew from nothing, their flowers screaming silently as they bloomed and withered in the same instant. The air tasted of honey and ashes, of pleasure twisted until it became agony, of desire so intense it ate itself from within. He walked forward through corridors lined with mirrors that showed not reflections, but possibilities. In one he saw himself crowned in thorns, of living obsidian ruling a dreaming corrupted into endless appetite. In another he knelt before a throne of writhing flesh, offering his realm as tribute. In a third he simply ceased to exist, consumed and forgotten. Dream did not look at the mirrors. He had seen attempts at temptation before, across countless realities. This was merely more elaborate. The palace shifted around him with each step, testing him, probing for weakness. Halls stretched to infinity, then collapsed to inches. Chambers filled with treasures that whispered promises of power. Beings of impossible beauty reached for him from shadows, their forms perfect beyond reason, their voices singing songs that could drive gods to madness. Dream walked past them all as if they were nothing more than stage props in a poorly written play. How delightfully rude, a voice purred from everywhere and nowhere. It was musical and grating, seductive and repulsive, 1,000 voices speaking in perfect harmony that should not harmonize. A guest arrives in my palace and does not even acknowledge the hospitality offered. Where I come from, that is considered quite impolite. Dream stopped walking. The palace solidified around him, settling into a throne room vast enough to swallow solar systems. At its center sat Slaanesh, the Dark Prince of Chaos, the youngest god, she who thirsts. The form shifted constantly, male and female, and neither and both. Beautiful beyond description, yet fundamentally wrong in ways that made reality itself recoil. One moment an androgynous figure of flawless perfection, the next a collection of writhing sensations given shape, then something else entirely that human minds lacked categories to process. I am Dream of the Endless, he said, his voice cutting through the palace's madness like a blade through silk. I do not acknowledge hospitality from parasites who feast on stolen consciousness. Slaanesh laughed, and the sound made the palace walls bleed colors that had no place in normal reality. Oh, how precious. It thinks it can insult me. It thinks its little titles matter here, in my realm, in the heart of sensation itself. The Dark Prince leaned forward on a throne made from the crystallized screams of billions of Eldari. Tell me, little wanderer, what exactly are you? You are not warp-born. You are not material. You do not belong in this reality at all, do you? I was summoned, Dream replied, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. The Eldari reached beyond their dimension to call for aid. Summoned, Slaanesh repeated, tasting the word like fine wine. No, I think not. One cannot easily summon the endless. They are conceptual beings bound to the structure of their native reality. They cannot be called like common demons or angels. The Dark Prince stood, descending from the throne with movements that were part dance, part hunt. Yet here you are, which means something unprecedented has occurred. Your realm and mine have touched, and in that touching, you fell through. Dream felt something cold settle in his chest, an emotion he rarely experienced. Uncertainty. Slaanesh was right. He should not have been able to respond to any summoning. The Endless went where they willed, when they willed, constrained only by their functions and responsibilities. Yet Eldrad's ritual had pulled him here against all logic and cosmic law. I see understanding dawn in those pretty black eyes, Slaanesh continued, circling Dream like a predator circling prey. You are trapped here, little Dream. Your dreaming does not exist in this reality as it should. The warp has subsumed it, transformed it, made it into something far more interesting. And without your realm to anchor you properly, you are adrift. Powerful, yes, but lost. I am never lost, Dream stated, but even he could hear the doubt creeping into his voice. Slaanesh moved closer, reality warping with each step. Let me show you what happened to your precious dreaming. Let me show you what my birth did to the realm of sleep and story. The Dark Prince raised a hand, and the throne room dissolved. Dream found himself standing in a space between spaces, watching history unfold around him like a three-dimensional tapestry. He saw the Eldari Empire at its height, worlds beyond counting united in pursuit of perfection. He saw them master technology that made matter into thought and thought into matter. He saw them achieve near-immortal lifespans, transcendence, believing themselves gods of their own making. And he saw them grow bored, saw them push further into sensation, into experience, into excess. Every pleasure explored until it became pain, every joy pursued until it curdled into agony, every dream twisted until it became nightmare. And through it all, he felt the dreaming dying. In his own reality, the dreaming was the foundation of consciousness itself, the place where minds went to process experience and create meaning. But here, as the Eldari pursued sensation without limit, they corrupted that foundation. They made dreams into vehicles for excess. They transformed sleep into another arena for competition and achievement. They weaponized the unconscious mind. Watch, Slaanesh whispered in his ear, the Dark Prince's breath hot enough to scorch dimensions. Watch what happens when an entire civilization refuses to accept limits on desire. The vision accelerated. Dream watched as the warp, already a reflection of consciousness, began to coalesce around the Eldari's collective psychic footprint. Their desires, their needs, their appetites, all flowing into the Imperium like poison into water. The dreaming, already weakened by their corruption of sleep itself, could not withstand the pressure. It cracked, shattered, collapsed into the warp's roiling madness, subsumed into the Imperium. And from that dissolution, Slaanesh was born. A god of excess and appetite, feeding on the very thing that destroyed the dreaming. The moment of birth was a psychic scream that tore a wound in reality itself. The Eye of Terror, a place where the warp bled directly into material space. 90% of the Eldari died in that instant, their souls pulled directly into Slaanesh's maw. Their dreams became the Dark Prince's sustenance. Their nightmares became entertainment. The vision ended. Dream found himself back in the throne room, his perfect features showing genuine horror for the first time in eons. You consumed it. You ate the dreaming and subsumed it into your being. Consumed, transformed, elevated, Slanesh corrected, returning to the throne with a satisfied smile. The dreaming was such a limited thing in this reality, safe, boring, predictable. I made it into something alive, something that feeds back into consciousness, something that grows with each sensation experienced. The Dark Prince gestured broadly. This is what dreams should be. Intense, real, unlimited, not your sanitized little sandbox where mortals play pretend. Dreams are not meant to consume the dreamer, Dream said, his voice carrying an edge of cold anger that made the palace walls tremble. They are meant to restore, to process, to heal. What you have created is parasitic. It feeds on consciousness rather than serving it. And there is the fundamental difference between us, Slanesh purred. You believe dreams should serve mortals. I know that mortals exist to experience sensation, to feed gods with their emotions and desires. You are a servant pretending to be a master. I am honest about what I am. Dream felt the palace pressing in around him, not physically but conceptually. Slanesh was trying to understand him, to find the cracks in his nature, to discover how to corrupt or claim him. The Dark Prince had consumed the dreaming of this reality. Now it wanted to consume Dream himself, to add his power and knowledge to its collection. You cannot have me, Dream stated flatly. I am not of the warp. Your rules do not fully apply. Everything in this reality is touched by the warp eventually, Slanesh replied. Even you, little wanderer. Even you. The Dark Prince's form shifted, becoming something that wore Dream's own face, his own shape. I already own dreams here. What makes you think you are any different? For the first time, Dream felt genuine danger. Not physical threat, but something deeper. An existential assault on his very nature. Slanesh was right that the dreaming did not exist here as it should. His realm, his anchor, his source of power and purpose had been subsumed by the chaos god sitting before him. Without it, what was he? Just a consciousness adrift in a hostile reality, powerful but purposeless. I see the doubt, Slanesh said, delighted. I taste it. Uncertainty is such a delicious flavor, especially from beings who rarely experience it. The Dark Prince leaned forward. Join me, Dream. Merge your knowledge with mine. Together we could reshape consciousness itself. No more limits, no more rules, just pure, infinite experience. No, Dream said simply. He reached into his coat, seeking his sand, his tools, anything familiar. His hand found it, but the sand felt thin, diluted, as if this reality refused to fully acknowledge it. His artifacts existed but diminished. He was, for perhaps the first time in his existence, significantly weakened. Slanesh sensed the weakness immediately. The throne room contracted, walls rushing inward, the palace itself becoming a cage. You refuse? Then you will stay here until you change your mind. Time means nothing to the warp. I have eternity to wear down your resistance. Dream closed his eyes, thinking quickly. He could not fight Slanesh directly, not in the Dark Prince's own realm. His power came from the dreaming, and the dreaming existed here only as a corrupted shadow within the Imperium. But he was still Dream, still endless, still something that predated and transcended normal existence. And wherever stories exist, exits exist. Every prison contains a door by narrative necessity. He created a door, not a physical door, but a conceptual one. An exit that existed because stories demanded one, because the rules of narrative required it. It appeared in the palace wall, simple wood and iron, completely out of place among the grotesque excess surrounding it. Slanesh shrieked in frustrated rage as Dream walked toward it, the Dark Prince's will trying to stop him but unable to quite grasp how to prevent something that operated by different rules. You cannot escape me forever, Slanesh howled as Dream reached for the handle. I own dreams in this reality. Sooner or later you will sleep, and when you do, I will be waiting. Dream pulled the door open and stepped through, leaving the palace behind. The effort cost him. A fragment of his essence remained caught in Slaanesh's realm, a debt that would need settling. He emerged back in material space, in the observation gallery of craft world Ulthwé, where Eldrad still waited. The Farseer had aged visibly in the time Dream had been gone, stress lines deepening around his ancient eyes. 7 days, Eldrad said quietly. You were in the warp for 7 days. I thought we had lost you. Time moves differently there, Dream replied, his voice carrying exhaustion that Endless should not feel. I met Slaanesh. I saw what happened to the dreaming in this reality. He turned to face Eldrad fully. I cannot kill your god, Farseer. Slaanesh is not separate from the warp. It has subsumed what should be the dreaming into itself. To destroy it would require unmaking the Imperium itself. The hope died in Eldrad's eyes, replaced by the familiar weight of despair. Then we are doomed. There is no salvation for our people. I did not say I would not help, Dream corrected. I said I cannot kill Slaanesh, but perhaps there are other ways to resist. He looked out at the stars again, feeling the vast psychic presence of the warp pressing against reality. I need to understand this universe better. I need to see how your Imperium has survived. If humans have found ways to endure chaos, perhaps there is knowledge I can use. Before Eldrad could respond, new alarms shrieked through the craft world. A different threat this time, not warp-based but material. Ships had just translated from the warp at the system's edge, Imperial vessels, cruisers, and frigates bearing the symbols of the Holy Inquisition. They had detected the massive warp disturbance caused by Slaanesh's confrontation with Dream. They will demand entry, Eldrad said grimly. The Imperium tolerates our existence because we occasionally prove useful. But any sign we traffic with demons brings immediate response. I am not a demon, Dream stated. Try explaining that to an Inquisitor, Eldrad replied with something that might have been bitter humor. The Imperial delegation arrived within hours, cutting through Craftworld Ulthwé's elegant halls like a crude blade through silk. At its head walked Inquisitor Covenant, a woman whose augmented eyes gleamed with circuits that processed information faster than normal brains could think. She wore power armor painted in the black and red of the Ordo Malleus, the Demon Hunters. Behind her marched a specialized detachment of Grey Knights, their psychic presence like hammers against consciousness itself. Farseer Eldrad Ulthran, Covenant stated without preamble. This craft world registered a warp disturbance 7 days ago with magnitude comparable to a greater demon manifestation. You will explain immediately, or we will purge this vessel from existence. Eldrad gestured toward Dream, who stood waiting in the center of the chamber. We reached beyond the warp to call for aid. This being is not of chaos. He predates it. He is Dream of the Endless, Lord of the Sleeping Realm. Covenant's augmented eyes focused on Dream, scanning him with every sensor available to Imperial technology. Her expression shifted from suspicion to confusion to something approaching fear. My systems cannot classify you. You register as an impossible pattern in the warp, something that shouldn't exist according to known psychic phenomena. By all standard metrics, you are an anomaly. Yet I do exist, Dream replied. I am Dream. I govern the realm of sleep and story across realities, or I did before arriving here. He looked at Covenant with those bottomless black eyes. Your Emperor would understand what I am, I think. We are similar in some ways, both beings given purpose that transcends normal existence. The Grey Knights reacted instantly to what they perceived as blasphemy. They raised their force weapons, psychic energy crackling along blessed blades. Covenant held up one hand, stopping them. You dare compare yourself to the God Emperor of mankind? I do not compare, Dream said with cold precision. I observe. Your Emperor was human once, transformed by purpose and belief into something more. I have always been what I am. But we both exist to serve consciousness in our own ways. The Emperor serves no one of the Grey Knights growled, his voice distorted through his helmet. All serve him. Then you do not understand the nature of rulership, Dream replied. Those who rule without purpose are tyrants. Those who rule with purpose are servants of that purpose. Your Emperor serves humanity's survival. I serve the necessity of sleep and dream. Covenant made a sharp gesture and the Grey Knights attacked. They moved with supernatural speed, their force weapons cutting through dimensions as easily as flesh. Dream did not move. The blades passed through him like he was made of shadow and memory, leaving him completely unharmed. The Grey Knights tried again, this time adding psychic assaults to their physical strikes. Bolts of pure thought energy crashed against Dream's form and simply ceased to exist, cancelled out by his fundamental nature. Enough, Covenant commanded. The Grey Knights stepped back, frustrated and confused. Their weapons worked against demons, against chaos entities, against every threat they had encountered in centuries of service. But Dream was not warp-born. He was something else entirely, and their specialized arsenal had no purchase on his nature. Covenant studied Dream for a long moment, her augmented mind processing options and outcomes. Finally, she lowered her weapon. If you cannot be fought or contained, then you must be understood. I am Inquisitor Covenant of the Ordo Malleus. My duty is to protect humanity from demonic threats. You claim to be something other than demon. Prove it. How would you suggest I prove a negative? Dream asked. Show me what you are, Covenant replied. Let me see your purpose. If you truly govern dreams, then walk through mine. See what the Imperium faces, understand our struggle. Then perhaps we can determine if you are threat or ally. Dream considered this. He needed to understand this reality better. And what better way than through the dreams of those who defended it? He nodded once. Very well, Inquisitor. Sleep, and I will show you why I am not your enemy. Covenant made a decision that would have scandalized her superiors. She ordered her Grey Knights to stand down, found a meditation chamber in the craft world, and allowed herself to sleep while surrounded by Xenos. The Grey Knights protested but obeyed, standing watch over their Inquisitor while she entered the most vulnerable state any human could achieve. And Dream, Lord of the Sleeping Realm, followed her into her dreams. He found himself in a burning city, not any specific city, but all cities, every human settlement that had ever fallen to chaos. Covenant dreamed of failure. She dreamed of worlds lost, of innocence corrupted, of noble defenders falling to temptation and becoming the very evil they had sworn to fight. She dreamed of the constant pressure of fighting a war that could never truly be won, only delayed. Dream walked through her nightmare, observing without interfering. He saw Covenant as a child, watching her parents executed for harboring an unsanctioned psyker. Saw her training with the Inquisition, learning that mercy was weakness and certainty was survival. Saw her first demonic encounter, watching her mentor torn apart while she pulled the trigger that denied the demon its prize. Saw a lifetime of impossible choices, each one forcing her to sacrifice what she wanted to protect in order to preserve what she could. In the dream, Covenant stood alone on a wall of corpses, firing a bolter that never ran out of ammunition at a tide of demons that never stopped coming. She would fight until she fell, and then another would take her place, and another forever. That was the Imperium's dream. Eternal struggle, eternal sacrifice, eternal duty. Dream materialized beside her in the dream. This is not how dreams should function, Inquisitor. They are meant to restore you, to process your trauma, to help you heal. This is simply reliving your pain each night. Covenant continued firing, not looking at him. Dreams are luxury. The Imperium has no room for luxury. We have only duty. Duty without rest leads to exhaustion, Dream observed. Exhaustion leads to mistakes. Mistakes lead to failure. You are slowly grinding yourself to dust in service to an empire that will replace you without thought the moment you fall. Yes, Covenant agreed simply, still firing. That is what it means to serve the Emperor. We are expendable. Our lives matter only in how they contribute to humanity's survival. Individual comfort is nothing compared to species continuation. Dream was silent for a long moment, watching her fight an unwinnable battle in her own mind. Then he did something he rarely did. He changed someone else's dream without permission. The tide of demons stopped. The wall of corpses dissolved. Covenant found herself standing in a garden, simple and peaceful, with a fountain that sang with clean water and trees that bore fruit that smelled like childhood memories. "What is this?" she demanded, reaching for her bolter and finding it gone. "What have you done?" "I have shown you what you have forgotten," Dream replied. "Rest, restoration, peace. These are not weaknesses, Inquisitor, they are necessities. Even warriors must sleep, even defenders must dream. Otherwise, what are you defending?" Covenant stared at the garden, tears streaming down her face in the dream. "We defend this, gardens and peace and the luxury of safety. We defend the right of others to live without knowing the horrors we face." She turned to Dream. "But we cannot have it for ourselves. If we allow ourselves peace, we lower our guard, and lowered guard means death." "That is the trap your Emperor has built," Dream said, though without judgment. "A civilization where the defenders must sacrifice their humanity to preserve humanity itself. Where the guardians must become monsters to fight monsters. Where the only dream allowed is the dream of duty." He gestured to the garden. "I cannot change your reality, but I can give you this. Moments of peace in your sleep. Brief respites where you remember what you fight for." When Covenant woke, she found tears on her cheeks and the first genuine rest she had experienced in decades weighing on her limbs. Dream stood nearby, watching her with his impossible black eyes. The Grey Knights had their weapons raised but had not attacked, clearly uncertain what to do. "Well?" Dream asked. "Am I demon or ally?" Covenant sat up slowly, considering. She had felt his presence in her mind, felt his power to shape dreams. If he had wanted to corrupt her, he could have. If he had wanted to kill her, she would already be dead. Instead, he had shown her a garden and let her wake unharmed. "Neither," she finally said. "You are something else. Something that should not exist in this reality but does." She stood, her movement stiff from sleeping in power armor. "But you are not demon. Of that much I am certain." "Then what do you suggest, Inquisitor?" Eldrad asked from the chamber entrance. "Will you inform your superiors? Summon armies to destroy this craft world?" Covenant thought for several moments, her augmented mind calculating possibilities. "Dream claims he wants to understand our Imperium. Very well. Let him meet the Emperor himself. Let the Master of Mankind judge this being's nature and purpose. If Dream survives that encounter, we will have our answer." Dream nodded slowly. "I accept. I wish to understand how your Emperor has survived 10,000 years fighting what I witnessed in Slaaneish's realm. Perhaps there is knowledge worth learning." He looked to Eldrad. "I will return when I understand this reality better." "The journey to Terra will take weeks through the warp," Covenant warned. "Are you certain you wish to subject yourself to that?" "I have already walked through Slaaneish's palace," Dream replied. "Your warp holds no terrors worse than that." He was wrong, but he would not discover that until much later, when the ship carrying him toward Terra became lost in the Imperium, and Dream learned that the Chaos Gods had noticed his existence and made plans of their own. The inquisitorial cruiser translated from the warp into real space with a shudder that ran through every deck. Dream stood in his assigned quarters, feeling the ship stabilize as it left the Imperium behind. The journey had taken 17 days by ship time, though he suspected centuries might have passed in the material universe. Time meant little in the warp, and even less to one of the Endless. He had spent the voyage walking through the dreams of the crew. 3,000 souls aboard the vessel, and not one of them dreamed of anything but duty and death. Servitors did not dream at all, their lobotomized brains too damaged for normal sleep. The tech priests dreamed in binary code, their augmented minds processing data even in rest. The soldiers dreamed of battles. The officers dreamed of command decisions. Even the children in the ship's lower decks, born and raised in the vessel's corridors, dreamed only of serving the Emperor when they grew old enough. It was the most depressing thing Dream had witnessed in millions of years of existence, an entire civilization that had forgotten how to dream of hope. Only duty, survival, sacrifice. Inquisitor Covenant found him staring out the viewing port at the blue and brown sphere of Terra below. From orbit it looked almost peaceful. The scars of industry and war were hidden by distance and atmosphere. "We will land within the hour," she said. "The custodians have granted us passage to the outer palace. From there you will be brought near the throne itself for the Emperor's judgment." "You seem nervous," Dream observed. "I am terrified," Covenant admitted, her augmented eyes flickering with barely controlled emotion. "I have served the Emperor for 40 years. I have never been to Terra. Most Inquisitors never are. The fact that we received clearance at all is unprecedented. That you will be judged by the Emperor himself is beyond miraculous." "Or suspicious," Dream said quietly. "Your Emperor knows I am coming. He has been expecting me." "How could you know that?" "Because I felt his attention the moment we entered the Sol system. A vast psychic presence focused upon this ship like a star focused through a lens. He is watching me even now." Dream turned from the viewport. "Your Emperor is curious about what I am. Just as Slanesh was curious. Just as you are curious." The descent to Terra took them through layers of orbital defense that could have destroyed fleets. Weapons platforms the size of cities tracked their approach. Entire battle groups of Imperial Navy vessels hung in formation, their guns trained on anything that moved without proper authorization. The Imperium's throne world was the most fortified location in the known galaxy, and it showed. Landing brought them to a spaceport that processed 10 million arrivals per day. Despite the chaos of traffic, their vessel received priority clearance and was directed to a restricted platform reserved for inquisitorial business. Custodians waited for them, their golden armor gleaming in the weak sunlight filtering through Terra's polluted atmosphere. They stood 3 meters tall, giants among giants, engineered to perfection by the Emperor himself in ages past. The shield captain spoke, his voice resonating with authority that made even Covenant straighten her posture. "The anomaly will come with us. All others will remain with the vessel." "I am his escort," Covenant protested. "My duty requires I accompany him to ensure he presents no threat to the Emperor." "Your duty ends here," the custodian stated flatly. "The Emperor has commanded the anomaly's presence. Yours was not requested." There was no room for argument in that tone. The custodians answered only to the Emperor himself. Even an Inquisitor's authority meant nothing before them. Covenant looked to Dream, uncertainty clear on her face. "If you mean harm to the Emperor, know that the Imperium will hunt you across galaxies and realities. We will never stop, never rest." "I mean no harm," Dream assured her. "I simply wish to understand." He turned to follow the custodians, his black coat billowing behind him despite the absence of wind. The journey through the Imperial Palace was a lesson in scale and devotion. They walked for what felt like hours through corridors so vast that cities could have fit within them. Statues of Space Marine Primarchs towered overhead, each one larger than the buildings Dream had seen on other worlds. Cathedrals opened off the main processionals, filled with millions of pilgrims who had traveled their entire lives just to reach Terra and pray in the Emperor's presence. Dream saw suffering everywhere he looked, pilgrims who had worn their knees to bone stumps crawling across kilometers of marble floor. Tech priests voluntarily blinding themselves so their last sight would be the Imperial Palace's majesty. Children born in the pilgrim lines who would die in those same lines, never having lived anywhere else. All of it done willingly, even joyfully, in service to the Emperor. "This is madness," Dream said quietly as they passed a cathedral where 10,000 voices sang praises that would continue unbroken for the next century. "This is faith," the shield captain replied without slowing his pace. "Faith is all that sustains the Imperium. Without it, humanity fragments into a billion pieces, each vulnerable to chaos. The Emperor's divinity unites our species. Doubt is death." They reached a massive door inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Beyond it lay the approach to the throne room where the Emperor had sat for 10,000 years, slowly dying while holding back the forces of chaos through sheer will. The custodians stopped, forming an honor guard on either side of the entrance. "You proceed alone from here," the shield captain stated. "Know that if you attempt harm against the Emperor, your death will be immediate and absolute. Your power, whatever its source, will not save you." "I understand," Dream said. The doors opened with a sound like thunder, revealing a corridor that stretched beyond normal distance. He stepped through and the doors closed behind him with finality. The corridor was lined with more custodians, hundreds of them standing at perfect attention. Their eyes tracked Dream's progress, but they did not move, did not speak. They were statues given life, guardians who would stand until time itself ended if the Emperor commanded it. Dream walked past them, feeling the weight of their vigil pressing against his consciousness. The corridor opened into an antechamber, and then another passage, leading ever deeper into the heart of the palace. Finally he entered, a chamber so vast its boundaries disappeared into shadow and distance. At its center stood the golden throne, a massive construct of technology and psychic architecture that had no comparison in any reality Dream had visited. Cables thick as starship hulls connected it to power sources buried deep in Terra's crust. Psychic wards carved from materials that should not exist formed layers of protection around it. And at its heart, upon a seat that was equal parts throne and prison, sat what remained of the Emperor of mankind. Dream stopped, genuinely shocked for the first time since entering this reality. The being on the throne had once been human. That much was clear. But 10,000 years of sacrifice had worn away everything mortal. The Emperor's physical form was a withered husk, skin stretched tight over bones that seemed too large for human proportions. Tubes fed nutrients into veins that no longer pumped blood properly. Machines breathed for lungs that had long since failed. The flesh was dead or dying. But the mind, the consciousness, that was more alive than anything Dream had encountered in this universe. The Emperor's psychic presence filled the entire chamber, pressing against reality itself like an ocean trying to fit inside a cup. It was focused, directed, purposeful. Every ounce of that vast awareness was dedicated to a single task: holding back chaos. Dream could feel it now, the constant psychic warfare happening in dimensions beyond normal sight. The Emperor fighting a battle that had raged unbroken for 10 millennia, without rest, without relief, without the mercy of unconsciousness. Words formed in Dream's mind, bypassing sound entirely. They were not spoken but impressed directly onto his consciousness with a force that would have shattered lesser beings. Dream of the endless. Lord of the sleeping realm in realities where such realms still exist uncorrupted. You have traveled far from home. Dream found his own voice inadequate to respond aloud. He shaped his thoughts carefully, projecting them toward the vast intelligence focused upon him. I was summoned, or I fell through when realities touched. I am uncertain which. Both are true. The Emperor's presence deepened, examining Dream with an attention that felt like being studied by a star. Your dreaming and our warp are opposite expressions of the same fundamental principle. Consciousness creates reality through belief and emotion. In your universe, that process is ordered, controlled by beings like yourself who maintain boundaries. In ours, it is chaos, raw and terrible and hungry. Slanesh showed me what happened, Dream said. The Eldari's excess birthed a god that subsumed the dreaming of this reality, collapsed it into the warp's madness. The Eldari were fools, but they were not the first to corrupt the Imperium. Images flooded Dream's mind, history compressed into pure understanding. He saw humanity's own fall during the Age of Strife, when human psychers first opened themselves to the warp without protection. He saw countless species throughout galactic history, each one discovering psychic power and being destroyed by what lurked in the space between thoughts. He saw the warp as it had been before chaos, a calm sea of emotion that merely reflected consciousness without feeding upon it. What changed? Dream asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. War. Suffering. The war in heaven 60 million years ago between the Old Ones and the Necrontyr who became Necrons, along with their Cetan star gods. That conflict scarred the warp permanently. Trillions died. Their pain and terror and hatred fed something that had been dormant, made it grow, made it aware, made it hungry. The Emperor's thoughts carried weight like mountains. The Chaos Gods are not invaders from outside reality. They are reality's immune system turned cancerous. They are what happens when consciousness becomes a weapon against itself. Dream processed this, his ancient mind working through implications. And you fight them, alone, for 10,000 years. Not alone. Thousands of psychers are sacrificed each day to sustain the Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that allows human navigation through the warp. Their deaths fuel the light that guides our ships. Their suffering purchases humanity's expansion across the stars. There was no pride in the Emperor's thoughts, no satisfaction, only exhausted necessity. I did not choose this fate. I was forced into it by my son's betrayal. Horus wounded me mortally, and I was placed upon this throne to preserve what remained. Now I cannot leave, cannot die, cannot even sleep. I must remain vigilant every moment of every day, or chaos breaks through and consumes Terra itself. You have not slept in 10,000 years? Dream felt something he rarely experienced. Horror, true deep horror at what that meant. Sleep was not luxury, it was biological necessity for conscious beings. The mind required it to process information, to clear toxins, to maintain sanity. 10,000 years without sleep, without even the refuge of unconsciousness, was torture beyond any physical torment. I have not slept, the Emperor confirmed. I have not dreamed. I have only fought. Every moment of every day I battle the Chaos Gods in the warp while maintaining the Astronomicon and protecting Terra from demonic incursion. This is my nightmare eternal, and I cannot wake from it. Dream felt the full weight of the Emperor's existence crash into his consciousness. He experienced just for an instant what those 10 millennia had been like, the constant pressure of chaos pressing against his mind, the endless psychic combat with entities that could not be truly killed. The awareness of every psyker sacrifice, feeling each one die to fuel the Emperor's continued function. The knowledge that humanity suffered in his name while he sat trapped, unable to act, unable to improve their condition, only able to maintain the bare minimum necessary for species survival. The instant passed, but its impact remained. Dream staggered, his perfect composure cracking for the first time. This is unsustainable. You are dying. Slowly, but dying nonetheless. Eventually, the Golden Throne will fail. Eventually, you will be released into death. And when that happens, chaos wins. Yes. The Emperor's agreement was simple and terrible. I am a dead man who refuses to fall. Every day I weaken. Every century the throne systems degrade a little more. The tech priests do their best to maintain it, but they no longer understand the technology. They worship it rather than repair it. Eventually I will die and Terra will burn, the Imperium will fragment. Humanity will face extinction. Then let me help you sleep, Dream offered, the words coming before he fully thought them through. I can give you rest. True sleep, even here, even in these circumstances. I can grant you dreams to restore your consciousness, to give you the healing that 10 millennia has denied you." The chamber fell silent. Every custodian outside felt the Emperor's consideration of this offer. Every tech priest tending the throne's systems experienced a moment of vertigo as their god figure contemplated accepting aid from an external entity. On worlds across the Imperium, psychers and astropaths felt a psychic pulse as something unprecedented occurred. The Emperor was genuinely tempted. "I cannot sleep," the Emperor finally replied, and his thoughts carried profound sadness. "If I sleep even for an instant, my guard drops. Chaos breaks through, terror falls. Everything I have sacrificed for becomes meaningless." He paused, and Dream felt the weight of what came next. "But I can show you what my vigil entails. I can let you experience my perspective. Then you will understand why your offer, however well meant, is impossible." Before Dream could respond, his consciousness was pulled into the Emperor's own awareness. He found himself experiencing existence from the master of mankind's perspective. He felt the constant pressure of chaos pressing against Terra's psychic defenses. Felt the astronomicon burning in his mind, a lighthouse of pure will that consumed psycher souls by the thousands every day. Felt the prayers of billions of Imperial citizens all calling for salvation, for protection, for hope. And beneath it all, he felt the four great powers of chaos focusing their attention on Terra. Khorne's rage, seeking to break through and drown the throne world in blood. Nurgle's despair, offering release through plague and entropy. Tzeentch's schemes, weaving plots within plots to undermine the Imperium from within. And Slaanesh's hunger, forever seeking to claim the Emperor's vast psychic presence as the ultimate sensation. Dream experienced 10,000 years compressed into subjective minutes. He fought alongside the Emperor in psychic combat against demon armies that numbered in the billions. He felt the weight of every moral compromise, every innocent sacrificed, every atrocity committed in the Emperor's name. He understood, truly understood, that the Imperium's cruelty was not casual evil, but calculated necessity. That every horror served to prevent greater horror. That compassion was a luxury this universe could not afford. When the experience ended, Dream found himself kneeling on the chamber floor, his perfect features showing tracks of something that might have been tears. "I see," he whispered. "I understand now why you cannot sleep, why you cannot rest, why you cannot show mercy. Do you also understand why your presence here is dangerous?" the Emperor asked. "You offer hope, the possibility of dreams that do not serve duty. The luxury of rest in a universe that punishes rest with extinction. My Imperium is built on sacrifice and suffering because those are the only reliable currencies in the war against chaos. If people begin to hope for better, if they begin to dream of lives without constant sacrifice, the entire structure collapses." Dream rose slowly to his feet. "Then your Imperium is built on a foundation that will eventually crumble. Humans cannot sustain endless suffering forever. Eventually, despair becomes indistinguishable from Nurgle's corruption. Eventually, duty without purpose becomes mere violence." "I know." The Emperor's thoughts carried exhaustion so profound it bent dimensions. "I built the Imperium to be temporary, a fortress to protect humanity until we evolved beyond the need for gods and demons. But I have been trapped here for 10,000 years while it ossified into something permanent. What was meant to last centuries now claims to be eternal. And I am too weak to change it, too occupied with merely maintaining humanity's survival to guide its evolution." "What would you have me do?" Dream asked. "I cannot leave this reality. My dreaming does not exist here as it should for me to return to. I am trapped, just as you are trapped. Two beings who should not exist here, both unable to escape." The Emperor's response was immediate. "Then make your trap purposeful. You cannot restore the dreaming across the entire Imperium. The warp's corruption runs too deep. But perhaps you can create pockets. Small spaces where dreams exist as they should, where consciousness can rest and restore itself. Not for everyone that would be impossible, but for some, enough to preserve the possibility of hope while not undermining the necessity of duty. Dream considered this carefully. It was a compromise, and he hated compromises. But this universe seemed to run entirely on compromises. Perfect solutions did not exist here, only less terrible options. You are asking me to become part of your Imperium's machinery, to serve your purpose. I am asking you to serve consciousness itself, the Emperor corrected. The same purpose you have always served, simply adapted to this reality's constraints. You cannot be dream of the endless here. But perhaps you can be dream of the sanctuaries, lord of small havens where sleep remains pure. And what of chaos? Slaanesh already knows I exist. The other gods will learn soon enough. They will hunt these sanctuaries, corrupt them, destroy them. Then you will defend them. The Emperor's presence intensified, and Dream felt something being offered. Not control, not domination, but connection. A link between the Emperor's vast psychic presence and Dream's own nature. I can establish your purpose within the Imperial structure, make you recognized rather than rejected, give you authority to act without every Inquisitor and Space Marine chapter hunting you as demonic threat. At what cost? Dream asked, because he was beginning to understand that nothing in this universe was freely given. You must accept coordination with my will, the Emperor stated plainly. Not as master over slave, but as aligned purpose. You will act according to your nature, but within parameters that serve humanity's survival rather than potentially undermining it. You will not offer salvation. You will not promise paradise. You will simply give moments of rest to those who need them most. Dream stood in silence for a long moment, feeling the weight of the decision before him. He could refuse, could attempt to act independently, doing what he thought right regardless of the Imperium's approval. But that path led to constant warfare with Imperial forces, energy wasted fighting those he wished to help rather than serving them. Or he could accept the Emperor's offer. Become part of the machine, constrained but effective, limited but purposeful. Show me the alternative, Dream demanded. Show me what happens if I refuse. The Emperor granted this request without hesitation. Visions flooded Dream's consciousness. He saw himself hunted by gray knights and assassins, constantly moving, never able to establish the sanctuaries he wished to create. He saw the Chaos Gods focusing increasing attention on him, sending champions and demon armies to claim or destroy him. He saw worlds burning because he had tried to give them hope without the strength to defend it. He saw the Inquisition declaring entire sectors corrupt because of his unsanctioned presence, billions dying in purges meant to eliminate his influence. The vision ended. Dream understood. Independent action in this universe led to catastrophic unintended consequences. The Imperium's brutal hierarchy existed for reasons that, however unpleasant, were grounded in terrible necessity. I accept, Dream said finally, though his voice carried the weight of compromise. But I will maintain my standards. I will not kill unnecessarily. I will show mercy where possible. I will protect innocence above all else. Those restrictions are acceptable, the Emperor replied. In truth, the Imperium needs voices like yours. Reminders of what we fight for, not merely what we fight against. You will be my conscience in matters where I cannot act directly. You will preserve fragments of hope in a universe that seeks to extinguish them. Dream felt the connection forming. Not ownership, not control, but alignment. His purpose and the Emperor's interweaving, becoming complementary rather than conflicting. It felt wrong in some fundamental way, a violation of what the Endless were meant to be. But it also felt necessary. In this universe, even dreams required compromise. What do I become? Dream asked. I am no longer Dream of the Endless. The Endless do not exist here. What am I now? You are Dream of the sanctuaries, the Emperor declared, and the words carried psychic weight that rippled across the Imperium. Astropaths felt it. Psychers experienced it in visions. The faithful heard it whispered in their prayers. A new presence was being woven into the fabric of Imperial consciousness. You are the Lord of Sleep in humanity's eternal vigil. You are the guardian of rest in the war that knows no rest, and you will be remembered as such long after we both have passed from this reality. Dream felt the change settling over him. His nature remained his own, but its expression was now coordinated with the Emperor's vision for humanity. He was simultaneously free and constrained, powerful and limited, himself and something new. It was the most uncomfortable feeling he had experienced in millions of years of existence. The Chaos Gods will not accept this quietly, Dream warned. They will see it as challenge. Slaanesh especially will view sanctuaries of pure sleep as theft of what it claims to own. Let them challenge. The Emperor's thoughts carried grim satisfaction. They have grown accustomed to facing only human resistance. Let them discover what happens when something truly alien to their nature opposes them. Something that predates their corruption and remembers what dreams were before chaos twisted them. Dream felt something else forming in the connection. A warning. A vision of what was coming. He saw the Chaos Gods gathering their forces. Saw demon armies being prepared. Saw champions being chosen and empowered. The war for humanity's dreams was about to begin in earnest. And at the center of that vision, he saw himself standing on a world covered in sleeping citizens, defending them against the full fury of the warp made manifest. The vision faded. Dream opened his eyes to find himself still in the throne room, still before the golden throne. But everything had changed. He could feel the Emperor's presence within him now, a golden thread connecting his consciousness to the master of mankind. And he could feel something else. Other consciousnesses becoming aware of what had just occurred. The Chaos Gods had noticed. And they were very, very interested in the newest player entering their eternal game. Dream left the throne room carrying the weight of his new purpose like chains made of starlight. The custodians watched him pass with expressions impossible to read behind their helmets. They knew something had changed. The being who walked out was not quite the same as the one who had walked in. He had been sanctified, made part of the Imperium's vast machinery, given purpose that served the Emperor's vision. He hated it, and yet he understood its necessity. Inquisitor Covenant waited at the vessel, her augmented eyes tracking him with obvious concern. What happened in there? The astropaths reported massive psychic disturbances. Some claimed to hear the Emperor's voice for the first time in their lives. I made a choice, Dream replied simply. Your Emperor has granted me authority to create sanctuaries, places where humans can dream without warp interference. I will establish them across the Imperium and defend them from chaos. The Emperor blessed this? Covenant's expression showed shock that transcended her normal composure. He approved external assistance? That is unprecedented. These are unprecedented times, Dream said, and they are about to become more dangerous. He was proven correct within hours. As their vessel prepared to leave Terra's orbit, the warp convulsed. Not a minor disturbance, but a catastrophic rupture in the fabric of reality itself. Alarms shrieked across every Imperial installation in the Sol system. Void shields activated, weapons platforms charged. The entire defense network went to maximum alert in seconds. A rift tore open at the outer edge of the Sol system, a wound in space that bled impossible colors into the void. From it emerged vessels that belonged to no known fleet. Chaos warships, their hulls twisted by millennia in the Imperium, bristling with weapons that violated the laws of physics. But these were not random raiders. This was a coordinated spear-tip strike, all 4 Chaos Gods contributing their champions to a single united purpose, destroying Dream before his sanctuaries could be established. The shield captain's voice cut through the ship's communication systems. All vessels in the outer system are to engage immediately. This is a coordinated assault. The Emperor's will be done. Imperial Navy battle groups moved to intercept, their guns already firing at extreme range. Macro cannons launched shells the size of buildings. Lance batteries cut beams of coherent light across the void. Torpedo spreads darkened space with their exhaust trails. The defense of the Sol system was the most formidable military response in the galaxy, and it met the Chaos intrusion with overwhelming firepower. It was not enough. The Chaos vessels shrugged off hits that should have destroyed them. Their shields, empowered by the warp itself, absorbed damage and converted it into psychic energy that fed back to their demon crews. Worse, reality around them began to fail. Geller fields fluctuated, machine spirits went mad, entire Imperial vessels simply ceased to function as the Chaos fleet's presence corrupted the fundamental laws governing their operation. Dream watched from the viewing port as the battle unfolded. He could feel the Chaos God's attention focused like burning lenses on this single point in space. This was not about Terra. This was about him. They were willing to risk everything, to unite despite their eternal rivalries, to prevent him from establishing sanctuaries that might give humanity genuine rest. "We need to leave," Covenant said urgently, her tactical displays showing Imperial losses mounting. "Get you away from the system before the fighting escalates further." "No." Dream turned from the viewport, his black eyes reflecting golden light that had not been there before. "Running solves nothing. They will hunt me wherever I go. Better to face them here now, where Imperial forces can support the engagement." "You cannot fight an entire Chaos fleet," Covenant protested. "Not even the Emperor could do that from the throne." "I am not going to fight the fleet." Dream moved toward the ship's launch bay, his coat billowing despite the absence of air movement. "I am going to fight their leaders, remove them, and the fleet loses cohesion. The Chaos Gods fight each other as much as they fight us. Without strong champions to coordinate, they will turn on themselves." He reached the launch bay to find it already occupied. A specialized detachment of gray knights stood at attention, their psychic presence like hammers against consciousness. At their head was a figure Dream recognized from the Emperor's memories. Grand Master Voldus, leader of the Third Brotherhood, legendary for his psychic power and martial skill, dispatched under sealed writ for this very contingency. "The Emperor has decreed you require escort," Voldus stated, his voice resonating through his ornate helmet. "We will accompany you to face the Chaos champions. It will be our honor to fight beside the Dream of the Sanctuaries." Dream wanted to refuse, to spare them the danger of what was coming, but he felt the Emperor's will through their connection, felt the command underlying Voldus's words. This was not suggestion. This was Imperial necessity. The Grey Knights would witness his loyalty, would confirm his allegiance, would report back that Dream served humanity rather than his own agenda. "Very well," Dream agreed. "But stay clear of direct combat with the champions themselves. They are beyond your capacity to harm." "We have killed demon princes," Voldus replied with pride that bordered on arrogance. "We have banished greater demons. We fear no servant of chaos." "These are not servants," Dream said quietly. "These are the favored champions of all four gods, each empowered beyond normal daemon limitations. They are what happens when the Chaos Gods actually coordinate their efforts rather than undermining each other. Your weapons will be limited against them." Voldus was silent for a moment, then nodded once. "Then we will create opportunities for you to strike. Distract, harass, support. The Grey Knights do not flee from any battlefield while the Emperor's enemies draw breath." They launched in a Thunderhawk gunship, its hull reinforced with psychic wards and blessed ceramite. The void around the outer Sol system was chaos incarnate, ships exploding in flowers of flame and fury, weapons fire creating a deadly web across space. Debris fields from destroyed vessels spinning outward at lethal velocities. The pilot, a Grey Knight who had flown for 2 centuries, navigated through it with skill that bordered on prescience. Their target was the largest Chaos vessel, a battle barge that dwarfed Imperial cruisers and radiated malevolence like a second sun. Its name was etched across its hull in letters that hurt to read: the Eternal Covenant of Ruin. Aboard it, Dream could feel the champions waiting. 4 of them, one chosen by each god, working in unprecedented cooperation to ensure his destruction. The Thunderhawk crashed through the battle barge's shields through a combination of Grey Knight's psychic power and Dream's own ability to simply deny certain barriers their existence. They landed in a hangar bay filled with corrupted servitors and chaos cultists who opened fire immediately. The Grey Knights responded with brutal efficiency, their storm bolters tearing through corrupted flesh, their force swords cleaving through armor and bone with equal ease. Dream walked through the carnage untouched. Bullets passed through him. Blades found only empty air where he stood. He was not fully material when he chose not to be, existing in the space between dream and waking that conventional weapons could not reach. The cultists fell back in terror, their corrupted minds unable to process what they witnessed. The hangar bay opened into corridors that defied normal architecture. Walls curved in impossible directions. Gravity changed orientation randomly. The air was thick with incense that smelled of burned hair and rotten flowers. This deep inside the chaos vessel, reality itself was negotiable, reshaped by the faith and madness of its crew. The champions wait in the ship's heart, Dream said, following psychic impressions that led him deeper into the vessel's twisted interior. They have prepared a ritual space. They intend to trap me using warp energies. Can they succeed? Voldus asked, his storm bolter tracking threats that might or might not be real. They believe they can. Dream felt the trap ahead, its metaphysical jaws prepared to snap shut the moment he entered. They have studied what occurred on Craftworld Ulthway. They know I can be contained by certain techniques. They have prepared carefully. Then why are you walking directly into their trap? Because they are wrong about what will contain me. Dream stopped before a massive door inscribed with symbols that represented all 4 chaos gods united. They assume I am bound by the same rules that govern warp entities. But I am not of the warp. I am what came before it. And what comes before cannot be fully contained by what came after. The door opened, revealing a chamber vast as a cathedral and decorated with obscene murals depicting the glory of chaos. At its center stood 4 figures, each one a masterpiece of corruption tailored to their patron god's preferences. The Cornite champion was massive, 3 meters of muscle and brass armor, wielding an axe that screamed with the voices of everyone it had killed. His name was Grakthar the Blood-Crowned, and he had claimed 13,000 skulls in Khorne's name. His armor was painted with the blood of space marines, his cloak woven from the hair of murdered planetary governors. The Nurgle champion was a walking plague, his armor rusted and dripping with disease, his flesh swollen with tumors that pulsed with unnatural life. They called him one favored by Mortarion himself, though his true name had been lost to rot centuries ago. Flies swarmed around him in clouds thick enough to blot out light, each one carrying 7 different plagues. The Tzeentch champion was difficult to look at directly, his form shifting between multiple possible realities simultaneously. He wore robes of changing colors that hurt the eye, carried a staff topped with a screaming face that spoke prophecies in backwards languages. Master Pyrrhus, the ever-changing, sorcerer of impossible skill, who had rewritten his own past 17 times to achieve perfect power. The Slaanesh champion was beautiful and terrible in equal measure, perfection twisted until it became grotesque. She moved with grace that transcended physics, her weapons, a pair of living whips that sang with pleasure pain, coiling around her like serpents. Zarathus the Perfect, who had pursued sensation until even agony became ecstasy, who had murdered her way through 3 imperial sectors seeking the ultimate experience. Dream of the endless, Grakthar spoke first, his voice like grinding stone. You dare enter our domain. Khorne will feast on your essence. Your skull will join his throne. The grandfather welcomes you, the Nurgle champion wheezed through lungs filled with corruption. He offers release, peace through entropy, immortality through decay. All paths lead here, Pyrrhus intoned, his staff's screaming face laughing. I have seen 9 futures. In 8 you die, in 1 you serve. Choose wisely. Why choose at all? Zarathis purred, her whips caressing the air like seeking tongues. Embrace sensation beyond limit, no pleasure that breaks consciousness. Become more than you are through excess. Dream looked at each champion in turn, his expression unchanged. You speak your god's words without understanding what you face. I have walked through Slaanesha's palace and rejected her temptation. I have witnessed Khorne's endless rage and remained unmoved. I have seen Nurgle's garden of despair and felt only pity. I have navigated Tzeentch's labyrinth of change and maintained my identity. Your gods cannot claim me because I am not subject to their authority. Arrogant words, Grakthar roared, raising his screaming axe. Let us test your confidence against blessed steel. The champions attacked as one, their coordinated assault demonstrating the unprecedented cooperation the Chaos Gods had achieved. Grakthar's axe descended toward Dream's head with force enough to split continents. Zarathis's whips lashed out from opposite angles, seeking to bind and restrain. The Nurgle champion exhaled a cloud of plague that could kill with a single breath. Pyrrhus spoke words of unmaking, reality-warping syllables that should have erased Dream from existence. Dream raised one hand, and the attack simply stopped. Not blocked, not deflected. They ceased to have momentum, ceased to have purpose, ceased to have meaning. The champions found themselves frozen mid-strike, their weapons motionless, their powers neutralized. For an instant they experienced what Dream had shown Inquisitor Covenant in her dreams. Perfect stillness, perfect peace, perfect rest. Then Dream released them and they staggered backward, their coordination broken by the momentary experience of sleep. True sleep, untouched by warp corruption, for the first time since their corruption began. It lasted only an instant, but that instant was enough to show them what they had lost, what they had traded away for power and immortality. Grakthar recovered first, rage overriding confusion. What did you do to me? I showed you sleep, Dream replied. True rest. What you gave up when you swore yourselves to gods who cannot sleep, who do not dream, who only hunger. I need no sleep, the Cornet champion snarled. Sleep is weakness. Only slaughter matters. Only blood and skulls for the blood god. Then you are already dead, Dream said quietly. You simply have not stopped moving yet. The Nurgle champion laughed, the sound bubbling through corruption. You think to tempt us back to weakness? We are beyond such frailties. We are immortal, eternal, perfected through our God's gifts. You are slaves pretending to be free, Dream countered. Your gods own you completely. Every thought, every action, every breath serves them. You have no purpose beyond what they grant you. I offer something different. I offer the possibility of rest, of dreams that serve no master, of consciousness that exists for its own sake rather than as fuel for entities that care nothing for your individual existence. Zarathis hissed, her whips writhing with agitation. Lies. Sweet lies that lead only to weakness and death. The Dark Prince showed me truth. Sensation is all. Experience is all. Everything else is pretense. Then let me show you what you cannot experience anymore, Dream said. He gestured and the ritual chamber transformed. The Grey Knights watched in awe as reality shifted around them, the corrupted space becoming something else entirely. They stood in a garden, simple and peaceful, with flowers that smelled like childhood memories and trees that bore fruit that tasted of hope. The 4 champions recoiled as if struck. This place was anathema to everything they had become. Clean where they were corrupted, pure where they were twisted, peaceful where they were violent. It hurt them in ways physical weapons never could, reminded them of what they had been before corruption claimed them. "This is impossible," Pyrrhus whispered, his constantly shifting form stabilizing for the first time in centuries. "We are aboard a chaos vessel. Your power cannot create such space here." "I am not creating anything," Dream explained. "I am revealing what still exists beneath the corruption. The potential for rest, for peace, for genuine sleep that all consciousness requires. Your gods have hidden it from you, made you forget it exists. But it remains, waiting for any who would reclaim it." Grakthar swung his axe wildly, trying to destroy the garden illusion. The weapon passed through flowers without harming them, through trees without felling them. "Lies, illusions, trickery, I see through your deceptions." "Do you?" Dream asked. "Then explain why your weapon cannot harm anything here, why your rage finds no purchase, why your god's blessing fails in this space." The cornate champion had no answer. None of them did. They stood in the garden, four beings of immense power rendered helpless by the simple presence of peace, unable to destroy or corrupt what Dream had revealed to them. "I offer you a choice," Dream said, addressing all four champions. "Return to your gods and continue your existence as weapons. Or sleep. True sleep, for the first time since your corruption began. I will guard your dreams personally, ensure they remain untainted, give you rest your gods can never provide." "And if we choose sleep?" Zarathis asked, her voice uncertain for the first time in millennia. "What becomes of us?" "That depends on what your dreams reveal," Dream replied honestly. "Some of you may find that fragments of your original self remain beneath the corruption. Others may discover that nothing redeemable exists, that you are now simply extensions of your gods. But either way, you will know truth, and truth is something your gods cannot grant you." The champions looked at each other, four beings who had moments before been united in purpose, now uncertain, divided. The Chaos Gods' voices screamed through the warp, commanding their champions to reject this offer, to destroy Dream, to return to their purpose. But for the first time in their existence as corrupted beings, the champions hesitated. Pyrrhus spoke first, his voice carrying wonder that transcended his corruption. "I have seen 9 futures, now I see a 10th. It was hidden before, obscured by the architect of fate himself. But now it stands revealed, a future where I sleep, where I dream, where I am more than a pawn in eternal games." "You would betray the Changer?" Grakthar demanded. "Betray everything we have been promised?" "We have been promised nothing but eternal service," Pyrrhus replied. "Power without purpose, existence without meaning. This being offers something our gods cannot, the possibility of rest." The Nurgle champion wheezed agreement. "The grandfather loves us, yes, but his love is smothering, eternal, inescapable. I remember before corruption there was sleep, there was rest, there was peace between labors. I would know that again, even briefly." Zarathis was silent for a long moment, her perfect features showing actual pain for the first time. The Dark Prince promised ultimate sensation, every experience, every pleasure, every extreme, but I have not slept in 3,000 years. I have not dreamed. I have not known rest. That is one sensation denied to me, the only one I have not experienced. Only Grakthar remained defiant, his rage overwhelming any doubt. "Cowards, weaklings, you dishonor Khorne with such thoughts. I will have none of it. Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. That is all that matters. That is all that will ever matter." Dream nodded slowly, understanding. "Then you have made your choice, and I respect it, even as I pity you." He gestured, and the garden faded. They returned to the ritual chamber aboard the Chaos vessel. But something fundamental had changed. 3 of the 4 champions lowered their weapons, uncertainty replacing their earlier certainty. Only Grakthar remained standing in aggressive posture, his axe raised, his rage undiminished. "I will die before I betray Khorne," the Cornet champion declared, "and I will take you with me." He charged, his speed enhanced by demonic blessings, his axe blazing with warp fire. Dream did not move, did not defend himself. The blade descended, unstoppable, inevitable, and passed through Dream like he was made of morning mist, finding only emptiness where there should have been flesh and bone. Grakthar stumbled, his momentum carrying him past his target. Before he could recover, Dream placed one hand on the champion's shoulder. The touch was gentle, almost compassionate. "Sleep now," Dream said quietly. "Not the eternal sleep of death, but the temporary sleep of rest. Dream, and in your dreams, meet the Grakthar you were before Khorne claimed you. Then decide which version you wish to be." The Cornet champion collapsed instantly, his massive form falling to the deck with a crash that shook the chamber. He lay still, his breathing deep and regular, caught in slumber that no amount of rage could break. Around him, his fellow champions also lowered themselves to the deck, accepting Dream's offer, their forms relaxing for the first time in millennia. The Grey Knights stared in amazement, their weapons lowered. Grandmaster Voldus approached Dream cautiously. "You disrupted 4 of Chaos's greatest champions without violence, without death. How?" "I gave them what they needed most," Dream replied. "Rest, choice, the possibility that some fragment of their original selves might remain. Things their gods can never provide because those gods themselves are incapable of such concepts. What happens to them now? They will dream. Their dreams will be pure, untainted by warp corruption, protected by my direct attention. What they see in those dreams, what they remember of who they were before corruption, will determine their fate. Some may find fragments worth saving. Others may discover only emptiness. But all will have the opportunity to know truth." Voldus processed this carefully. "The Imperium will want them destroyed. Chaos Space Marines cannot be trusted." "Then the Imperium will have to trust my judgment," Dream said with quiet authority. "The Emperor granted me sanction to create sanctuaries and defend them. These beings, if any fragments remain redeemable, will become my responsibility, not the Inquisition's, not the Grey Knights. Mine." Before Voldus could argue, the entire vessel shuddered violently. The ritual chamber's walls began to dissolve, reality itself fragmenting as the Chaos Gods withdrew their support from the ship. Without the champions to coordinate the spear-tip strike, without the united purpose that had brought the 4 gods together, the entire assault was collapsing into infighting and chaos. "We need to leave," Voldus stated urgently. "The vessel is tearing itself apart." Dream gathered the sleeping champions with a gesture, their forms rising from the deck and following him like children following a parent. The Grey Knights formed a protective cordon as they made their way back through dissolving corridors toward the hangar bay. Behind them, demons materialized to reclaim their masters, but Dream's presence drove them back. He projected a sphere of pure dream space around the group, a bubble of reality where warp entities could not fully manifest. They reached the Thunderhawk and launched just as the Chaos battle barge began its final death throes. Explosions blossomed across its hull as its warp drives lost cohesion and tore the vessel apart from within. The other Chaos ships were already fighting among themselves. Khorne's vessels attacking Tzeentch's, Nurgle's forces turning on Slaanesha's in the eternal cycle of rivalry that consumed the Chaos Gods when strong leadership was removed. Imperial forces pressed their advantage, driving the fragmenting Chaos fleet back toward the warp rift at the system's edge. Within an hour, the battle was over. The Sol system remained secure, its outer approaches cleared of immediate threat. The attempted strike against Dream had failed spectacularly. Back aboard the inquisitorial cruiser, Dream placed the 4 sleeping champions in a chamber specially prepared for them. He warded it with psychic barriers that no demon could cross, created dream space within it that would remain pure regardless of external corruption. The Grey Knights stood guard outside, uncertain whether they protected prisoners or patients. Inquisitor Covenant found Dream standing alone in an observation gallery, watching Terra rotate slowly below. "The High Lords are demanding explanation," she said. "The Emperor's sanction protects you, but they want to understand what happened. 4 Chaos Champions taken alive, an entire strike force destroyed without catastrophic Imperial losses. It is unprecedented." "They will have their explanation," Dream replied. "But first, I need to begin the real work, the sanctuaries, places where Imperial citizens can sleep without warp interference, can dream without risk of corruption, can rest knowing they are protected. Where will you establish the first sanctuary?" Dream considered for a moment, then spoke with quiet certainty. "Craftworld Ulthway, where this began. The Eldari need hope more than any species I have encountered. They will be the first to experience what sanctuaries can provide." "That will cause political complications," Covenant warned. "The ecclesiarchy will object to an emperor-sanctioned entity establishing sanctuaries among Xenos. Then they will learn that the Emperor's vision extends beyond simple human supremacy," Dream replied. "The Chaos Gods threaten all conscious beings. My sanctuaries will serve any who need them. After Ulthway, I will expand to Imperial worlds, guard regiments broken by war, astropath facilities, shrine worlds under demonic pressure. One at a time, building a network of protected spaces where consciousness can rest safely. And the Chaos Gods, they will not accept this peacefully." "No," Dream agreed. "They will fight. They will send champions and demon armies. They will attempt to corrupt the sanctuaries from within. But they will fail, because I am not fighting them on their terms. I am not trying to destroy chaos or conquer the warp. I am simply creating spaces where their influence ends. Small havens where dreams remain pure, that is all. But it is everything." Days later, Dream stood on Craftworld Ulthway's observation deck beside Farseer Eldrad. Below them, in specially prepared chambers, 1,000 Eldari slept peacefully for the first time since the fall. No nightmares haunted them. No Slaanesh's pull tormented their rest. They simply slept, and in sleeping dreamed of futures that did not end in their souls being devoured. "You have given my people something we thought lost forever," Eldrad said quietly. "Hope. Not salvation, but hope." "Hope is enough," Dream replied. "Hope allows survival. Survival allows possibility. Possibility allows change. Given enough time, even the warp might be healed. Given enough sanctuaries, even chaos might be contained. It will take millennia. Perhaps longer. But for the first time since entering this reality, I see a path forward." He looked out at the stars, feeling the Emperor's consciousness brush against his own through their connection. Feeling the approval, the gratitude, the shared understanding that this was only the beginning. The war for humanity's dreams had begun in earnest, and Dream of the sanctuaries stood ready to fight it. In the throne room on Terra, the Emperor watched through golden perception as his newest champion began the work of creating something precious in a universe that had forgotten preciousness existed. The master of mankind could not smile, his withered features incapable of expression, but his thoughts carried satisfaction that rippled subtly through the Astronomicon itself. Perhaps there was hope after all. Perhaps the grim darkness of the far future might yet be illuminated by the light of genuine dreams. Perhaps consciousness deserved more than eternal warfare and sacrifice. Perhaps rest was not weakness but necessity. Dream had taught the Emperor something he had nearly forgotten across 10,000 years of vigilance. That the point of survival was not merely to continue existing, but to preserve the possibility of living. And living required dreams. The symbol began appearing in dreams across the Imperium, a stylized image of closed eyes surrounded by stars, representing the sanctuaries and their guardian. Citizens who had never known restful sleep began to experience moments of true peace. Space Marines returning from battle sought the sanctuaries for brief respite, Even inquisitors, those most suspicious of anything external to imperial orthodoxy, began to understand that dreams served humanity in ways they could not. The first imperial sanctuary was established on a shrine world recovering from demonic invasion. Then a guard regiment's medical facility, then an astropath choir station. One by one, the sanctuaries spread, each one a small pocket of pure dream space defended by dream's presence and the Emperor's distant aegis. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there was only war, a new possibility had emerged. Not victory, not salvation, not paradise, just rest, just dreams, just the simple possibility of waking refreshed rather than exhausted. And for billions of imperial citizens grinding through lives of constant sacrifice, that simple possibility was everything. The Dream Ward worlds, as they came to be called, became beacons of hope in a hopeless galaxy. Places where chaos's hunger could not reach, where sleep was safe, where dreams remained untainted. Dreams stood eternal vigil over them all, defending the boundary between rest and nightmare, ensuring that even in a universe consumed by horror, some still had the luxury of dreams.